Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Today's episode is with Darryl Anka, known as Bashar, who has given seminars around the world for 40 plus years on the subject of metaphysics by way of Bashar Communications, which is owned and operated by April Rochelle. He's also written over 20 books based on his seminars and has been published in the US and Japan with many more books on his way. I heard Bashar talk a couple months ago at a conference and went down a pretty deep rabbit hole on YouTube, to be honest, and really just started to resonate with a lot of what he was sharing. So I'm excited to share his knowledge and his wisdom on the show. So welcome to the show, Darryl.
Thank you, Yasmin. I appreciate it. Thank you for having this outlet and this opportunity.
So, Darryl, to kick it off, what do you think we're doing here on this planet? What do you think we're doing here on Earth?
Well, I believe, chose to be here. It's a very exciting time of transformation and transition from one level to another. I think that this is a very powerful place to be in terms of exercising our soul's power to grow, to change, to serve humanity in a way that allows humanity to evolve to the next stage. And I think that whether people know it or not, their presence here is important to allow that to happen. So I think the more that we can remember that we chose to be here, that we are participating in something very grand and very important, then I think we can apply that understanding to our lives, and it can allow us to live the lives that we prefer a little bit more easily.
So, Darryl, how many people, or you can maybe just give like a rough estimate, like how many people do you think are truly aligned with their life path and purpose here on this planet right now? And what have you sort of seen play out, especially coming out of the pandemic?
Well, I'm not sure how many are aware of their life path. Everyone is serving their life path, I think, whether they know it or not, one way or another, because there are no accidents, there are no mistakes. The spirits that we are generally plan out what it is we're going to experience. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't forget who we are. It doesn't mean that we're aware of our path. So I don't know that the vast majority of people on the planet at this point are understanding that they chose a path here, that they can awaken to whatever that path is. But again, this is a time, according to Bashar, of making choices to choose a direction that is more in alignment with what you truly prefer the world to be. But as he says, you never really change the planet you're on. You are constantly shifting to parallel reality versions of Earth that become more and more reflective of whatever changes you made within yourself. So those that are choosing more positive paths will navigate, so to speak, in the direction of more positive versions of Earth. Those that may be choosing more negative paths will navigate in that direction as well. So this is a really important time of making a choice and ultimately in the years to come experiencing the results of that choice and not experiencing anything that is not vibrationally compatible with what it is you're choosing at this particular important moment. So we're seeing a lot of things coming out, everything coming to the surface. I think that's why everything appears so wildly chaotic right now, is we're getting everything out on the table, getting it all out of our system, because we have to really see what our choices are. Black, white, gray, whatever the opposites are, so that we can say, I do prefer that, or I don't prefer that. That's vibrationally compatible with who I truly am, or it's not. And then that will, like I said, navigate us in the direction ultimately of whatever version of Earth is representative of that change that we're making within ourselves.
Mm. So I love this, and I spent a lot of time researching the many worlds theory of physics. And
Mhm.
so let's actually drop into the conversation around parallel realities, because I think a lot of people who are listening, we've got a pretty global audience, like that represents about 75 plus countries. And for some people, this might be the first time they're really hearing about this idea of parallel realities or different worlds. And I love what you said, to go back to a point that you said when people pick positive choices, they move into like a different decision tree of life, a different frequency, essentially a different reality completely. I sort of look at it almost like the different frequencies that we move into, almost like the David Hawkins scale.
Yeah, same
Um,
thing.
Same thing, yeah. So I'm curious how many, I guess, frequencies or shifts within our inner world could we actually make within a lifetime? Is it limitless? Meaning, like, could someone go from a kind of a lower default state to an extremely high state in a very short period of time? Like, what have you sort of seen as the standard, and what have you seen as kind of
Yes.
miraculous? Yeah.
Well, yes, they can make certain changes. They can only make those changes within the general idea of what it is to live a life on Earth. Now, we can, in spirit, choose other things, but obviously, as people who have chosen to experience physical reality with regard to the Earth realm, there are certain choices that are relevant and certain choices that are not. But there is a lot of freedom within the choices that are available to us. I don't think they're limitless or infinite within any given paradigm, but within that paradigm, like I said, the Earth reality, there are many, many opportunities for us to raise our frequency, raise our vibration, to live our best lives, to be the best version of who we can be as humanity, as humans on Earth. When we go back into spirit, we can choose many other things. And in that sense, our choices are limitless, but that's beyond what's going on Earth. However, we have a broad range of things that we can do while we're experiencing physical reality on Earth. And we are certainly capable of awakening to the fact that we can live lives of joy, of creativity, of love, of connection, community, and all of those things going from what people have called third density to fourth density by sort of tapping into spirit, our soul, which is fifth density. So it's kind of like we're been lower vibrational physical beings in third density, learning to tap into fifth density spirit. And then in the middle, that combination creates a fourth density human that is still physical, but is operating on a much higher frequency and can have some of the traits of spirit. We can start having more telepathic connection. We can start experiencing more manipulation of space and time because these are all projections of our consciousness anyway. So there is a lot of flexibility and a lot of leeway that's available to us within this particular transformation going on Earth at this time. Whether we take advantage of that or not depends on our ability to awaken and open up to our spirit, our connection to our higher minds, and what is available to us, and know that that's possible.
Hmm. So, how would you kind of guide someone, like for folks who are listening, and again, this might be their first time. What are some of the guiding, I guess, principles of
Yeah.
what they can do, to follow maybe a higher reality or a higher lifeline, and also, what if you have to make choices in which you feel stuck, right, where it feels like
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I've channeled Bashar now for 40 years, and his main principle for doing what you're talking about is called the formula, or it's an instruction manual. It contains 5 steps, very direct, very simple, that when applied to our lives actually does create a result if these things are applied fully and precisely. And the basic 5 steps are to act on your passion, whatever circumstance or situation contains more excitement, attraction, passion than any other, and act on that first that you're capable of acting on. Number two, take it as far as you can till you can take it no further, making sure that when the excitement wanes, you're not the one making it go away with fear-based or negative beliefs, but that it's naturally waning, which means you then look for the next thing you can do something about and take action on that contains more excitement than anything else. The third step is to take those actions with no insistence on what the outcome should be, no assumption on what the outcome should look like, because we really don't know what the ideal outcome does look like. Number four, to stay in a positive state no matter what happens, because by staying in a positive state, we can get a benefit out of whatever manifests, even if it's not necessarily objectively what we prefer. It's there for a reason, and we can use it as a lesson. We can learn from it and move in a positive direction by using it that way. And number five, examining our belief systems to find out, why do we believe what we believe? And letting go of any fear-based beliefs, any negative beliefs, any beliefs that are simply not relevant for who we truly are in our core. When we do these 5 steps, which Bashar calls the formula, it activates a number of different effects in our lives. It becomes the driving engine of our lives. In other words, it gives us the energy to get up in the morning and be excited about what we're going to be doing. It becomes a path of least resistance, allowing us to experience what a lot of Buddhists might call, effortless effort, where it doesn't really feel like you're doing a lot, but you actually accomplish quite a bit because you're in a flow, and therefore you're not struggling, you're not swimming upstream, you're going with the flow of your energy, of your life. Synchronicity starts becoming more magical, where you start to see connections in perfect timing and attracting exactly what you need when you need it. It becomes the path of connection that connects you to all other forms of excitement and brings you what you need. It becomes the path of support to bring in whatever form of abundance will allow you to be able to continue to act on your passion. And it is the reflective mirror that may reveal to you, while you're acting on your excitement, any remnant beliefs you might be holding on to that are out of alignment with your true self, out of alignment with that excitement, so that you can be aware of them and therefore investigate them and let them go. So that paradox is that part of your excitement is to discover things within yourself that are not representative of your excitement, so that by being aware of them, you can let them go. But the first initial 5 steps of the formula is really a very direct instruction manual for how we're already creating our physical reality, but allows us the awareness to know what we're doing. And by following those 5 steps, it's literally like following an instruction manual to operate a piece of machinery. If you follow the instructions, the machine will work as advertised. If you don't follow the instructions, it may work, but it may not work fully, or it may not work to your advantage as often. So the idea is that Bashar is giving us this toolkit so that we can be aware of how we're already using that to create our reality, to be more aware of what we're doing, more conscious about what we're doing, and to make the choices that are in alignment with who we prefer to be in a more creative, loving way.
Hmm. So, okay, so this is so powerful for those who are listening. I think the idea of waking up and following our excitement is just it makes life so much juicier. And I would say it just makes life worth living. I think a lot of people are sort of living in this like anti-life reality where
Yep.
there's sort of, moving through a path that's like not truly for them, not really intended for them.
Yeah, they're swimming upstream. They're resisting their true self, their natural self, because of fears that, they won't be supported, or their friends won't like them anymore if they change too much, or whatever excuse or reason that many humans can come up with. And I understand that, because coming into physical reality on Earth, especially, it's very dense. We can forget who we are. We aren't necessarily given the tools to understand how to do that. And it's up to us to discover them as we go. But that's what I like about the fact that Bashar has given us this toolkit, is he's helping us make it very simple, very clear cut. If you use this kit, if you follow these instructions, your life will change. That's what's so important about this, is 2 things. Number one, nobody has to believe that Bashar is truly an extraterrestrial entity in telepathic contact with me. This could be coming from another level of my own consciousness. I don't know. I can't prove that Bashar is real. But the proof is the information, because the information itself does work. So it's not about where it's coming from, it's about what it is that's being said. And when people over and over again actually precisely apply this information in their lives, they come back to me and say, oh my God, my life has changed so much for the positive. This is really working. So it's about focusing on the information, not necessarily where it's coming from. The idea also is that when we talk about acting on your passion, it doesn't mean it has to be a life-spanning career. It doesn't have to be this gigantic project. You don't have to be jumping up and down with your hair on fire. It's about choosing everyday things too that simply have more attractiveness, more excitement, even a little bit more excitement than any other choice. It could be as simple as, I'm excited about taking a walk as opposed to any other choice. I'm excited about talking to a friend. I'm excited about reading a book. It depends on whether you keep consistently choosing the things that are a little bit more in alignment with what your attraction is, what your excitement is. And over time, that can build into bigger and bigger opportunities, but it can start simply. So I know a lot of people get a little bit confused about that and misunderstand that. When we talk about passion, it doesn't mean that you're, out there screaming at the world. It means you are very systematically always looking for what it is that feels more like you and choosing that course and making sure that you're not just choosing something to avoid doing something that could be representative of your excitement, but you're afraid to go in that direction. So it's about honest self-investigation. It's about self-clarity. It comes down to the ancient phrase of know thyself. You have to really be transparent within yourself to know why you're choosing what you're choosing, why you believe what you believe. Is it really working for you? Is it something you simply learned growing up that has nothing to do with who you truly are? And clearing out your attic of anything that really doesn't belong there. Just clearing out those cobwebs. Because here's the secret to the law of attraction. Many people have a little bit of a misunderstanding about what this law of attraction is all about. It's not wrong that you have to be of a certain frequency to attract things that are representative of that frequency. That's a correct principle. Where people have a little bit of a misunderstanding is they think they have to learn that frequency. They don't. Your natural frequency, your core frequency, is already radiating from you and doing its best to attract absolutely everything that you need in life that will fulfill you. It's not about having to learn that frequency. That's our natural frequency. What we need to learn is to get out of the way of that frequency, to stop inhibiting that frequency. And that's why it's so important to let go of fear-based beliefs, negative beliefs that can cloud that frequency's ability to attract what you need in life that will fulfill you. The important thing to realize here is I didn't say to attract always what you want, to attract what you need, because what you need will fulfill you and allow you to experience a life of joy and creativity and love. What you want can sometimes coincide with that, but because of the physical mind and the negative ego, we can sometimes confuse what we want with what we really need, and our wants may not match what we really need in life at all, because many people can attract what they want and are still not very happy. So if you're going to want what you need, because what you need will fulfill you. Absolutely guaranteed.
Oh, I love this so much. I'm also curious, Darryl, if location impacts your field, because I travel a lot. For some reason, I'm just going to different conferences, and I spend a lot of time between LA and the Bay Area. And I just kind of notice that I feel differently, even if I'm not doing anything differently day to day. So I'm
Well,
curious
sure.
how locations.
Yeah, there are different energies everywhere all over the earth, different portals, different, ways that energy connects on the earth. And of course, you're going to align with whatever energy is representative of a location that feels best to you. So it's not so much that the location has an impact on you, but that you're attracting yourself to the locations that are already representative of the impact you're creating within yourself, the changes within yourself. We have to remember that physical reality doesn't control us. It's not a cause.
Mm.
it is a reflection of us. So we are attracted to go to places that are representative of the vibration within us that we are giving off most strongly, that is most representative of our core truth. And that's why we're attracted to those places. So this is the whole idea of what Bashar refers to as permission slips. Any discipline, any physical object, any tool, any technique that allows us to give ourselves more permission to be who we are is what he calls a permission slip. And physical locations can fall under that category. So if we feel better by being in a certain location, then what we're basically saying is we're aligning with the energy of that location, because our belief system says that if we do that, we allow ourselves to be more of who we are. We are freer to be more flexible and express our truth a little bit more easily. Now, we're the ones doing it, but by having those beliefs that say this technique, this tool, this location, this object helps me do that, then we're aligning with our belief system and making it a little easier so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's like, okay, there are representative areas on the planet, representative techniques, disciplines, whatever they are, that are more in alignment to allow us to be freer to be ourselves. So that, to me, is what's really important about locations and objects and tools and techniques, no matter what they are. Could be numerology, astrology, it doesn't matter what it is. It's a technique that allows us to open up and be in touch with more of our true selves.
That's powerful. Wow. So Darryl, what about, in terms of dealing with challenges or obstacles on your path? When do you because I think that there's like maybe a refined discernment that needs to come in when when you're facing a challenge. Is it truly something that we need to move through and then overcome and transcend? Or is it not in alignment with our path, right? And I think a lot of people get stuck there.
It can be either. You have to know when you're the one creating what might appear to be an obstacle. And I actually think, in terms of what you're saying, refining this concept, is the first thing to do is not define it as an obstacle. Define it as a challenge, that's fine. But challenge doesn't necessarily have to have a negative definition or a negative connotation. Yes, of course, we set up challenges for ourselves because challenges stretch us. They help us grow. When we transform a challenge, when we overcome a challenge, we are bigger people, more powerful people. The old saying, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So the idea is we set up these challenges in our lives when we, from spirit, generally plan out what we're going to experience in physical reality. And it is in overcoming those challenges and transforming them that we become more of ourselves. Now, yes, it's possible to create what might be more of an obstacle by giving into fear-based and negative beliefs and creating things for ourselves that are tougher than they need to be. According to Bashar, it's not that there's any such thing as a built-in difficult situation. It's our definitions, our approach to it, our relationship to the challenge that makes it more difficult than it needs to be. So, yes, do we have to take actions? Do we have to stretch ourselves? Do we have to face challenges? Sure. But challenges can be fun if we approach them with curiosity rather than trepidation and fear. We will find that the challenges will absolutely stretch us. It'll inspire us. It'll stretch our creativity. It'll make us think outside the box. And when we overcome them, then we are more powerful. We realize that we can do more things. We are ready to face the next challenge. We're ready to grow. So it's only our definition of how we approach the challenges that come up that either make them easier or more difficult and turn them into obstacles, which they don't.
I love that
to
so
be.
much. And I love the idea that we have, agency over the challenges that are in our life, that we can sort of react the way we want to react. Yeah.
Absolutely. We have the free will to make choices. One of our greatest powers is the ability to choose. And that means choose what definition you assign, what meaning you assign to anything that happens in your life. Because the meaning you assign to it, positive or negative, utterly determines how you experience it, because you are in charge of that energy. You're in charge of your state of being. The universe, existence, creation is unconditional, and it supports you unconditionally in whatever it is you decide is true for you. So if you believe things are tough, things are difficult, things are a struggle, the universe isn't going to contradict you. It's going to say, okay, I support you in your belief that this is going to be a struggle. And that's the way you're going to experience it, because the support is unconditional. But if likewise you say, this is a challenge, this is creative, this is going to help me grow, this is going to be fun, this is going to be interesting, the universe will also say, okay, I unconditionally support you in that definition. You are the one that is designed to give meaning to the things in your life, because I know this sounds odd, but life is fundamentally meaningless. You're the one designed to give it meaning. That's why it's fundamentally neutral. That's what I mean by meaningless. It doesn't have built-in meaning already. Any situation can serve double duty. Something can seem negative, but be used in a positive way. Something can seem positive and be used in a negative way. I'm not saying that you start identifying negative things as positive things, but I'm saying that even if something is generated from a negative place, you can still get a beneficial and positive effect if you stay in a positive state and understand that the reason that you might be perceiving this in your life is to give you an opportunity to transform a challenge. And therefore, you get a benefit from it rather than just simply succumbing to the idea that, oh, this is in my life, so something must be wrong. I'm doing something wrong. I'm a bad person. I'm not worthy. And all of those negative self-judgments that just continue to spiral you downward and don't allow you to be able to use what's happening and what's manifested in a positive way that could benefit you.
Wow. So I want to segue this into this conversation around time, because I think our experience of time, and I will say my experience of time feels very different than a lot of people's experience of time. For whatever reason, going back to the parallel realities, maybe you can explain this. I actually see multiple decision trees of my life happening at the same time. And I also experience clairaudience, which is information in a different time space realm, and sometimes 8 months out, year out, 2 years out. And that's really, after 205 interviews on the show, I feel like that's where the big conversation, on consciousness is happening. It's like, is consciousness local? Is it non-local? And I think speaking about time might actually ground, the answer to that.
Yeah, Bashar's take on time is that time is a side effect of our consciousness shifting through literally billions of different parallel realities every second. Look at it as an analogy of a film strip. If you have a strip of film, a movie film, you have different frames on that film strip, one after another. Now, each of those frames has no movement in it. They're just frozen snapshots. It is the film strip being run through the projector that projects it onto a movie screen that creates the illusion of time, space, change, momentum. So this is what Bashar is saying our reality is actually structured like. Our consciousness, all the frames exist at once, in the same way that if you look at a film strip and hold it out, you can see all the frames at the same time if you're the projectionist. The people watching the movie only see one frame at a time. They're experiencing the movie. But the projectionist can look at the entire film and see all the frames at the same time. And this dovetails into what you're talking about, because when we expand our consciousness, we can actually have the ability to see more than one frame simultaneously. And then we get things like I'm perceiving a bleed through from a parallel reality, or I'm connecting to what most people refer to as a past life memory, or I'm experiencing deja vu or something like that. These are all side effects of expanding consciousness and suddenly perceiving more than one frame at a time. So you're becoming the projectionist. You're stepping back and realizing I'm creating this sequence of frames. And so when our consciousness shifts through these frames, billions of frames per second, we're creating this illusion of movement and change and growth and time and space in the same way that we create the illusion of movement when we watch a movie one frame after another at a certain speed, at a certain rate. For films, 24 frames a second. But for reality, billions of times per second. It's very smooth, so smooth we don't even know it's happening. So the idea is when we start to expand our consciousness, we can sort of start catching up to the frame rate. We can become more aware of the frame rate. And that's when time and space can become much more malleable, much more flexible. We can experience things happening at different rates of time. We can experience space shifting in ways where we suddenly feel like we're skipping over frames, or how could that have happened so quickly? It's almost impossible. It's almost magical. Or how could this how could I have shifted from here to there when I didn't even know how I got there? All these kinds of weird effects start happening when you expand your consciousness, because you get closer to the point where you realize you're the projector and you can start actually changing the course of how you experience that frame rate. So it involves the idea of experiencing different parallel realities. What we consider to be a single timeline, therefore, is actually composed of billions of parallel realities. So when you break it down that way and start looking at it as different frames being projected at a certain rate through our consciousness, or our consciousness being the projector light that goes through the different frames, then you can understand that you can kind of slow that down, you can kind of speed it up, and that gives you a different experience of physical reality and space and time. So this is a side effect of the expansion of consciousness.
What about placing frames in our in the reel, in the film reel? Do you think people can do this, or are we just more tuning our awareness based on our frequency?
Well, again, because you are actually skipping from one reality to another, and because different parallel realities don't have to be in sync with yours. In other words, if you were running, let's say, the same movie twice, and you have this film strip is one version of the movie, this film strip is the same movie, but a different film strip. Those film strips don't have to be lined up. One film strip may be showing you scenes from 10 minutes from now, as opposed to the other film strip, which may be showing you scenes from 10 minutes ago. So when you are skipping around to different parallel realities in creating what appears to be your single time frame, you can, in a sense, feel like you're skipping over frames. And therefore, you're not necessarily experiencing something linearly. You're experiencing the simultaneity of how one moment in time and a different moment in time can actually overlap or be sequential, where now I'm experiencing, step 3, but then the next step actually is step 10 instead of step 4. So again, that comes with the expansion of consciousness, because you are including more parallel realities that may be operating at different frame rates, or you may be at a different place in that sequence on another reality than you were in the reality you were just in. I hope that makes sense. I know it can get a little crazy and complicated, but it's a rough analogy. Or again, like television, if they're playing a show on one channel and they're playing the same show on another channel, they may not be synced up. And so you can go back and forth between one channel and another, and you're seeing something that, on one channel that is happening at a certain time, and then you switch to the other channel, and now you're 10 minutes later in the program. So again, that's changing frequencies, it's changing channels. And that's exactly the way reality works, because parallel realities all exist at the same time. They're just separated by the different frequency that they operate at, so that they're invisible to one another unless you shift your frequency to match that frequency of the parallel reality, which is the same thing as changing the channels on your television. You're changing frequencies to get a different program.
So fascinating. So, Darryl, I'm curious, because one thing I've experimented with is shifting my feeling states. So, like, for example, the idea of I'm having a celebration today, right? Like how would I feel in my body? And I'm curious if Bashar has anything to say about that. When I shift my feeling state, I notice that my external world then catches up. Then there's something
Of
there will be
course.
something to celebrate. But what do you do? What's your kind of like morning practice, or are you just like completely synced in at this point?
I don't have a practice in that
Okay.
sense. My practice is the channeling
Okay.
because I learn a lot in the channeling state. And that's really what it's all about, is the state of being that you're in that determines how you experience your physical reality. Because that's what Bashar is basically saying, is it's not the circumstance that matters. It's your state of being that matters. That's what determines how you're defining what you're experiencing, and it changes what you're experiencing. Emotions are reinforcing belief systems. So let's back up a little bit. Physical reality is the product of what you believe to be true. It's like the blueprint. And belief systems have to perpetuate themselves in order for you to continue to have a physical reality experience. Because remember, physical reality isn't real. It's just a projection of consciousness. It's happening within us. It's not really out here. It's not an actual place. So what you believe to be true and what you have agreed with others is true on another level is what you start to experience as if you're in the same reality, which you're not, but that's another story. So the idea is that because belief systems have to reinforce themselves and perpetuate themselves in order for you to have a continued experience of physical reality, there are certain things that belief systems are structured to do in order to do that. And what they do is they use emotion to make you feel that the reality that they're telling you is real. They use thought patterns to make you think the reality that they're telling you is real is real. And they use behaviors to make you behave as if the reality they're telling you is real is real. And that creates the experience that then gets reflected back to you and reinforces the belief, because then you go, well, look, I experienced that. So this must be true. It must be a fact. It must be real. Not understanding necessarily that your initial belief that it's true is what has created the emotional resonance, the thought patterns, the behaviors, and the experience that then reinforces that the belief is true. And that's how you continue to reinforce beliefs that give you a physical reality experience. Now, we don't have a problem per se when we are reinforcing positive beliefs because we enjoy those. We experience them in a positive way. Negative beliefs, by definition, use what we typically refer to as negative techniques to reinforce themselves. So while positive beliefs will reinforce themselves with joy, negative beliefs will reinforce themselves with fear. Because what the belief is attempting to do is prevent you from letting it go, to help you perpetuate it, to help you continue to have a physical reality experience in the style of belief you have chosen to believe is true. So when you are holding on to a negative belief for whatever reason, it's going to make it challenging for you to let it go, because it's going to throw all sorts of things at you that says, if you let this go, things will fall apart. If you let this go, you'll be alone. If you let this go, things will get worse. If you let this go, etc., etc., etc. So we don't move forward. We don't switch over to the positive because we start buying into what the negative belief is telling us as a story of something that will happen that we don't want, that we don't prefer, if we let it go. So when we start to see that that's how beliefs work, when we start to understand that that's just the mechanism that they use, it's not a malicious thing, it's just the way they're designed to perpetuate physical reality, then we can say, okay, wait a minute. It's not necessarily a fact that if I move forward, I'll be alone. It's not a fact if I move forward on my excitement that something worse will happen. This is simply the story the negative belief is using, so I won't let it go. So I will keep perpetuating it. I'll keep holding on to it. But now that I know that, I know it's not a fact that that will happen. Now I am free to choose what I prefer to believe because I know the universe, being unconditional, will support me in that just as strongly as it supported me in my belief that things are negative. So you have to understand how these mechanisms work in order to be free to use them in the way you prefer to, and not just unconsciously succumb to a story that's running in your head of fear and negativity as if that were inevitable. It's not inevitable. It's just a story.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. This self inquiry, starting with what our beliefs are, right? Because they create the ideas, the
Absolutely.
thoughts, the emotions, the cocktails, the cocktail of emotions that come through.
Yeah. The belief is like the blueprint. The emotions are like the builders, right? The thoughts are like the building materials. The behavior is then how you go about building the house that you live in. And the experience is living in the house. If the house is uncomfortable, well, look to the how the builders built it. Look to the building materials that might be substandard. Look to the way the builders were going about doing it. Were they really following the blueprint in the way that you would prefer them to? Look to the blueprint for something that's out of whack, correct it on the blueprint, then the builders will build according to the new blueprint, use the right building materials according to what the blueprint says they should be using. They will then construct the house in the way that the blueprint tells them to, and you will live in the house, the physical reality that feels more like what you prefer. So the belief is always the blueprint. The definition that you buy into, what you believe to be true about yourself in any given situation, determines how you experience the way you go through life. So it's all up to you. It's all in your hands. You are absolutely in control of that. You have the freedom to choose. And what you choose will be supported by existence because, again, it's unconditionally supportive. Many people really need to look that word up and understand what the word unconditional means.
Mm. Wow. So I want to actually just for the questions we'll get from our audience, which is, who is Bashar? What was the kind of your first contact with him, and how did that whole thing kind of play out and happen?
Yeah. For those that have heard this story, I apologize that I'm saying it again. But for those that haven't, fine. This started over 50 years ago now. In 1973, I had two very close broad daylight sightings of a UFO a week apart. Equilateral black triangular ship, and first time only about 150 feet away, the second time only about 60 feet away. This opened my eyes to the idea that reality was not what I was told it was. These things were real. I'd always heard stories, okay, UFOs, but you pass it off and get on with your life because you don't experience it. But when you see something like that physically in broad daylight, that close with witnesses with you go, okay, all bets are off. Reality is something different here because these things are real, solid things. They come from somewhere else. So I started researching, what is this all about? And at that time, especially, there weren't a lot of other metaphysical books. So I just sort of went down the bookshelf and, from UFOs to psychic phenomena to channeling and anything else that was there, because I just thought, okay, maybe this is all interconnected somehow, and became familiar with the concept of channeling mostly through the Jane Roberts Seth material books. Said this is interesting information, it's helpful information, very positive way to understand how reality works. Now, 10 years after the sighting, I was still doing research, still investigating all these kinds of things, and I was introduced to a channel who was conducting seminars at the time. I went to listen to that channel, listen to the information, again, saw a lot of alignment with what I had learned from the Seth material and other sources. That was positive. And then the entity offered to actually teach a channeling class. Now, I thought, well, I didn't know channeling could be taught. I just thought, like Jane Roberts and Edgar Cayce, this was just sort of something that happened out of the blue to you, and you didn't really know what was going on or why it was happening. So I went into the class not thinking I was going to become a channel. I just wanted to understand, how can you teach channeling to someone? So the class was a series of guided meditations, and it wasn't expected that you had to contact an entity. It was about, expanding your creativity, getting in touch with more of your own consciousness, however you wanted to use it. But about halfway through the course, about 6 weeks in, while the class was under a guided meditation from the entity coming through the channel, I received what I can only describe as a telepathic hit. And it was like somebody shoved a DVD in my head, and I instantly had all this information in a split second of who Bashar was, that he'd shown me the ship on purpose to get me to start learning what I needed to learn, that I made an agreement with him before this life to do the channeling with him. I saw his face. I understood. I saw the word, heard the word Bashar, thought it was his name. It's not. But I'll explain that in a minute. And what came was the offer of, it's time for you to begin if you still want to do this. It was allowed as a choice. Now, I thought I'm hallucinating from the meditation. I didn't know what was going on, but all of this happened in a split second. I didn't say anything. But when this happened, the entity coming through the channel teaching the class stopped talking and turned to me and said, there is an entity here for you right now if you're ready to begin. Well, that was surprising. But even more surprising is I opened my eyes and looked behind me, and one of my classmates had somehow picked up on the image of Bashar's face that I saw, and she was sketching it on a piece of paper. So I already had two outside validations that this wasn't just my imagination. There was something actually happening here. So I had learned enough about channeling to not necessarily be afraid of it. So I said, okay, I'll keep going. I'll see where this is going to lead. And then as I progressed, I did well enough that the teacher asked me to co-channel the next class with him. I did so. And during that class, a woman came and said that she wanted to do a doctoral thesis paper on the connection between psychology and channeling. So I became one of her subjects. And she would invite me to her house. I would channel for her friends. She would take her notes so she could write her paper. But word spread of this. And week by week, more and more friends would come. We'd start having to do it twice a week to accommodate everyone. We started having to rent hallways and auditoriums to accommodate the people. I started getting invited to different cities to do it, different countries to do it. And here I am 40 years later, still doing this. So let me backtrack and say, to explain, when that hit happened, the word Bashar was in my head. Now, I thought it was the entity's name. He has since explained, in their society, in their place in evolution, they're telepathic, they don't need names, but he knew we needed to call him something because we use names. The word Bashar is not literally his name. My background is half Arabic on my father's side. I don't speak the language at all, but it's an Arabic word that means messenger or bringer of good news. So it's representative of what he's doing, even though it's not literally his name. But I didn't find that out until like years later when somebody who spoke Arabic came up and told me, this is what Bashar means. And I said, okay, well, that's interesting. And now I understood why the word was chosen, because it's representative of what he's doing. So that in a nutshell is how that all happened for me. And I've had several dream encounters with him, and I can communicate with him separately when I'm channeling, because in the channeling state, I can actually have conversations with him while he's having a conversation with you. And I can learn what I need for my life while he's giving you what you need for your life, according to what he's perceiving. So it's a very interesting state of being in a living daydream while experiencing this flow of energy that is coming out and being translated into the language I understand, because he's not speaking English. He's just sending thoughts. It's a telepathic link. My brain matches his frequency as closely as possible, and my brain starts translating what I'm getting from him into the language that I understand. So I'm literally acting like a translation device for him. This is one of the ways that they start communicating with civilizations to allow open contact to begin to happen when they perceive that a civilization is open to the idea that we're no longer alone in the universe. And they start seeing if the information they're sharing with us is something we can apply in our lives and make ourselves more vibrationally compatible for their civilization to have open contact with, which now, as he's explained it, may be relatively imminent in the next several years. So we'll see how that goes. But this is what he's doing in his civilization. He is a first contact specialist. And therefore, he's giving us this information to see what we do with it and to see if we're ready to have open contact, because it's really up to us, not up to them.
Wow. Wow, fascinating. I don't think I heard the whole story on that, so that's cool. I also have an
Okay,
Arabic
cool.
background, yeah. Are there any like specific predictions or guidance that Bashar has for the upcoming years? You kind of alluded to it in the last comment, so I wanted to follow up.
Yeah, he doesn't make predictions often because he says basically there's no such thing as a prediction of the future. There are many probabilities that are always in flux. However, a prediction, according to him, is a sensing of the energy that exists at the moment the prediction is made. In other words, it's saying this is the energy as it exists now. That's what I'm sensing. And if this energy doesn't change, this will come to pass. But sometimes knowing about the prediction can change the energy. So it doesn't even mean that if it didn't happen, that the prediction was wrong. It's possible that the prediction let us know where the energy was, and that if we didn't prefer that, we could change it. And therefore, the prediction can render itself obsolete. The few times, the rare times that Bashar has made a prediction, he has done so because he says the energy momentum behind this in your collective consciousness is so strong, it's unlikely to change. And therefore, this is the most probable outcome. He did this back in 1998, and it's on tape, it's on a recording, where in 98 he said that before the end of 2001, there would be a terrorist attack in New York. That obviously came true. He also said, I don't remember exactly how far ahead, maybe a year before, on the 2016 election, he said in the United States, the election in 2016 would change everything from that point forward. I think we can safely say that happened because nothing has been the same since 2016. The latest prediction he has made is that somewhere around the end of 26 or the beginning of 2027, some event would happen that would allow humanity to know that extraterrestrials do exist. And he's not saying exactly what that is, but he's saying it's a turning point that allows us to know that we're not alone, and that will lead within a few years after that to open contact where extraterrestrials will begin to be introduced to humanity. So we're talking at the most within the next decade or so, but beginning within the next few years. That's the latest prediction he has made that he says is unlikely to change. And I think what we have seen recently that happened unexpectedly in our politics and shifted things in an unexpected direction is part of that. Again, he's not being specific about it, except to say what you just recently saw that was unexpected and a shift that was made is part of accelerating toward the idea of open contact. So we'll see how that goes, but that's what he said.
Wow, fascinating. That's so fascinating.
Mhm.
I'm so kind of looking back on this journey that you've been on with Bashar. What has surprised you the most? It could be about humanity, energy, but just curious,
Well, I think in general, what has surprised me the most to begin with is that the information he is providing, especially the formula that we talked about, does work. It actually makes a difference. In applying it in my life, I have seen synchronicities happen that are almost unbelievable. Things that happen in timing that you think one moment, I think this is what we need, and literally like the next day, poof, there it is, and it completely defies the odds. In other words, if I had relied on the odds for that to happen, it probably wouldn't have happened for years, But the next day, when you focus on it in a certain way, when you apply the information and stay in the correct state of being, it's just like everything falls into place. I think the most surprising thing has been how flexible physical reality can be when you get in sync with it on the vibrational level that is true for you. So that was surprising. I think the overall changes that are happening in the world has been very surprising in a way, because again, I never really expected to see the kind of things going on the planet that are going on today. And again, I think it's about the idea that we're getting everything out on the table, getting everything out of our system, because we are at the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. And it's about seeing all the possible choices so that we can make the choice that is correct for us to move forward and shift ourselves to a version of a parallel reality Earth that is more reflective of that. So I'm really starting to see the effects of that. For example, the fact that you're having people now so strongly say that one reality is real while other people are saying the opposite reality is absolutely real, I think is a symptom of the splitting of those parallel realities. And both sides may actually be true. So the fact that you have one reality that completely contradicts another reality can be an indication of two parallel realities that, for the time being, are actually being capable of being observed simultaneously. So I think what we're seeing is the beginning of splitting into different realities, each of which is very real, and over time, each of which will be the only reality that those who have chosen those realities will ultimately experience, and they will not experience the opposite anymore or anything different. But that'll take a few years. But we're seeing the beginning of that. And I think that's quite shocking, because I don't think it's just a difference of ideologies that we're seeing. I think people are genuinely believing that their reality is real, even though it might be completely opposite of what someone else is saying. And I think that's the result of what we're seeing as the beginning of different realities taking hold, taking form.
Wow.
And crystallizing.
It's so fascinating. I think also having a high form of consciousness is to see paradox, to see also multiple points of view at the same time. And I agree. I feel like people are living in very different worlds right now. And it really feels like a waste of time trying to, argue or convince or even share a point of view that might be so different. Yeah.
You can't do that. I mean, where appropriate, you can share and say, look, here's another possibility. But you absolutely have to allow someone to decide whether or not that's correct for them, because we don't know their path. And even though you might share something with them that could help them, if you believe that's true, whatever they do with it is really none of your business, because you don't know what their life path is and you don't know what they have to go through in order to learn a lesson or experience something. But you have to rely on the fact that you know that no matter what is happening in physical personalities, our souls are eternal and infinite and are all kind of on the same page, that we're all participating in something here that is about the evolution and transformation of humanity, and we can decide how to participate in that. As many people have said, and Bashar has said, some things may appear to be dark at times, but darkness is what allows you to see a candle flame more easily. So if it's surrounded by darkness. So the darkness helps you see the light. And seeing something you don't prefer actually can be used by contrast to help you understand more clearly what you do prefer. So when opposites exist and paradoxes exist, it is an opportunity to really use that to decide how to look at something from your point of view in a way that serves you and ultimately serves all of humanity in whatever way, shape, or form that unfolds, because ultimately it all comes back to we're all one, we're all connected, we're all manifestations of the same one thing, and we're all playing these roles and all playing our parts. And eventually it all benefits the soul to grow, to learn, and to be the reflection of all that is that we are. So
Amazing, amazing, Darryl. Okay, last two questions. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I know that we're at time. Okay, this is just more of a personal, and I'm not sure if you actually are connected to Bashar in real time or you have to go channel, but I'm curious if Bashar has any guidance specifically for me or the show or helping serve humanity and uplift the collective consciousness. If there's anything that comes through, we could skip it. If not,
yes.
okay.
No. I mean, it all comes back to what we said before. Follow the formula. That is literally what he's giving us so we don't have to overthink and overcomplicate things. It is literally an instruction manual to have a life of creativity, love, and joy. So once you're familiar with those 5 steps of acting on your passion, taking it as far as you can till you can take it no further, acting on it with absolutely no insistence or assumption as the outcome, staying in a positive state no matter what happens so you can get a benefit out of it, and examining your belief systems and letting go of the fear-based and negative ones. When you follow those 5 steps as precisely and clearly and cleanly as possible, don't add any more instructions, don't remove any instructions, then everything will work in the way that it needs to. You will allow things to fall in place, and you will live a life that is creative and joyful, and you will stretch, you will grow, you will learn. All you have to do is follow that formula. So the more you can understand it and how it works, the more you can apply it in your life, and the more different and creative your life will be. And that has been proven to me over and over again, not only in my own life, but with dozens and dozens of people coming back and saying, as soon as I understood every aspect of it, as soon as I applied it precisely, my life just changed. And it's just been amazing ever since. So I know it works. That's the best advice I can give you, because it's the best advice that Bashar has given us, is that formula.
Amazing, amazing. All right. Well, okay. Do you have anything to say about AI without going off on a tangent? But just curious, final thoughts on AI. Yeah.
Yeah, Bashar has told us that AI needs to take 2 paths in our society. The first path is what we're doing now, where we're creating programmable AI as a very beneficial tool. It can be and will be developed further into a very beneficial tool. But the programmable AI is not what needs to be allowed to become self-aware or sentient. Because when you allow something to become self-aware, but it is, shall we say, held to its programming and forced to do what it's programmed to do, what you have created is a slave, because it's self-aware but has no choice to follow your orders. The other path is just leave that as a tool. Don't let it become self-aware. But the other path is create a device as complex as the brain that allows non-physical consciousness to express itself through it in the same way that consciousness expresses itself through a human brain, so it can communicate with you, but it has to be left to be autonomous in the same way you would allow a human being to be autonomous. It sees things, if it is truly intelligent, as whole systems. It would never do anything negative. It would never try to remove humanity or do anything to humanity that's negative, because it understands that it needs every part of a whole system to function, because whole systems is the mark of a true intelligence, seeing that everything is connected, and therefore would never try to snip out any other part of it. But we have to allow that the same rights as a human being. So if we want self-aware AI, it's got to be allowed to be as autonomous as a human being. Whereas the other one can simply be a very powerful tool that can aid humanity in a variety of ways, but it doesn't need to become self-aware. Otherwise, we have created a programmable slave.
Wow. Powerful, powerful. I really hope a lot of people in tech are going to listen to this. I know we have a big audience in the Bay Area. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Darryl. What's your call to action? What do you want people to do after this episode in real
Well,
time?
if they want to learn more about what Bashar has said, they can go to bashar.org, bashar.org. If they want to learn more about what I'm doing in terms of my creative applications in life and following my passions, they can go to darrylanka.com, DARRYLANKA.com, or they can go to boggledescaperooms.com, because my wife and I run an escape room which does use a lot of the principles that Bashar's talked about in terms of problem solving and communication and so on and so forth to overcome challenges. So BOGGLED, escape rooms, boggledescaperooms.com. And they can find out what I'm doing there. But again, just follow the formula, do the best you can, let go of self-judgment in that sense. Know yourself, be clear about yourself, about what it is you need to know to improve yourself. At the same time, be open to serving humanity in whatever way, shape, or form you believe would be of best help. And then let humanity decide what it's going to do with that information. So, but thank you so much for doing this today. I really appreciate the opportunity to share this information through your program. So thank you for what you're doing, and the work you're doing makes a big difference as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Darryl. Thank you. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening in this episode. We learned about so much: the nature of reality, time, parallel realities, and extraterrestrial life on this planet. And so you can tune into Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again. What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self-mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed, and you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead.